the cell, including the electrolyte. So that's the reason why it doesn't work well. So you have huge polarization, the cycle life is very poor, and you have this material is solid, so when you come in and deposit in the pores of the cathode, the carbon, it blocks the pores, and then oxygen cannot come in. So these are some of the problems. There are more problems that I can spend an hour talking about. So what we've been doing, and we have some breakthroughs, we want to stay away from this material because it's corrosive. So we want to use only one electron transfer. If you use one electron transfer, you get 5 times more energy than lithium-ion, which is, we don't have to be greedy. 5 times is a lot. And we were able to do that recently. As you can see, we formed this phase, which was superoxide. Paper just published this year, actually. And we were able to reduce significantly the polarization. This is almost 1.5 volt, this is only 0.3 volt, and expand the cycle life significantly. And we demonstrate that we have this reaction using DEMS, as one electron transfer. So there is hope. So there is a lot of people now working on this system by trying to minimize 2 electron transfer using only 1 electron transfer. My conclusion, electrification of vehicles is underway with slow growth, as everyone say, the last 2, yesterday and today. We really need to reduce the cost, which is the main barrier really that limit mass commercialization of electric vehicles. If there is a car, electric car that people can buy for $25,000, you see a lot of things in the market. There's a lot of scientists in China. I have to say that I'm very impressed with the science now in China. The publication and the quality of the work that comes from China is very impressive now. And they are working very hard to reduce the cost. And the way to reduce is to increase the energy, as I explained to you. Beyond lithium-ion is the holy grail. There is a lot of progress, but there's still a lot of challenging issues that need to be addressed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that very nice talk. Our next talk is going to be given by Mr. Kevin Konecki from Total Battery Consulting. Mr. Konecki possesses 18 years of engineering experience, including 15 years in the EV industry, working on EV packs from GM, Publicis GM, Enerdell Volvo, Fisker Auto, and others. Mr. Konecki is known for his excellence as a team leader and engineering manager in energy storage systems and advanced technology vehicles, HEV, PHEV, EV, and EREV. He's skilled at new product design and development, product testing integration of multiple subsystems for vehicles, new product launches, and has expanded his skill sets to beyond batteries into power electronics. Let's welcome Mr. Konecki.
Well, good afternoon. I'm honored to be here and be able to speak with such a great group of speakers on here. So my presentation will be a little bit different. I'm going to be focused on the application side of the industry. We've had a lot of great talks about the policy side and the goals going down. And now the paper that I wrote involved looking at the industry as to what is implemented and what are the engineering decisions that went into the battery packs. And then want to look at some of the trends and how does that affect us going forward so we can achieve some of the lofty goals that have been set in front of us. So what are some of the engineering challenges? What are some of the growth opportunities we have? All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at, take a little step back into the engineering side of battery pack development. What are some of the decisions that the engineering team is working at, either from the OEM side or the battery supplier side, and then we'll look at each of the individual market segments within the xEV marketplace. The hybrid vehicles, plug-in hybrids, and electric vehicles. I'm very passionate about this industry. I'm a big proponent of it. They've always had some type of development vehicle from the different companies I've worked at, for GM, Fisker, and so on. I actually bought my first full battery electric vehicle about 2 years ago. I was doing a consulting project with a company in Beijing, so I'll be back and forth between California and Beijing. I'll be there 2 weeks of time each month. My wife started driving my electric vehicle every time I was gone. I finished up that project about a year ago, and I still haven't gotten my electric vehicle back, so we had to buy a second one. So we're actually family of 2 electric vehicles right now. So we're big proponents of them, and I think as people get into them, they just start to love the feel of the electric vehicle, the instant torque, just the drivability of the car is a big improvement. So I think you'll get addicted as well, and I think the rest of the world will get addicted to that. The one question that we'll answer, or we'll try to address with this, is are we seeing in the battery industry, are we seeing convergence or divergence? Are we all consolidating on the solution set for vehicles going forward, or is there still a lot of divergence in the solution set? All right, so first, this is my attempt when I'm working with different clients in battery system design, trying to do battery system design on one page. About a 100-page tutorial, and I always try to start and end with one slide as my one takeaway slide. What this is trying to communicate is for the battery system development, in order to meet the vehicle's needs, which that of course needs to meet the customer's needs in order to reach the volumes that we're talking about wanting to get to. We have to look at the battery system as an integration of multiple subsystems within that. And then the systems engineer and the engineering team has to optimize each of these subsystems to achieve the vehicle goals. So they have to do this within, so you look across here, you have these are basically the high-level categories of the decisions they have to make. Is it a power-based system or an energy-based system? What's the cell chemistry? And then within the cell chemistry, what is the right specific chemistry within that family of chemistries? What is a cell type? There's pros and cons for each. And mechanical system of the pack, thermal system, BMS hardware and software. They have to go through all these different areas to find the best optimization and integration of the systems. As we start getting into some of the graphs and some of the trends, this is just a list of vehicles that was looked at. There's about 100 different vehicle configurations that we looked at. I'm trying to hit all the major ones from 2000 until today, as you can see there. I'll skip through these couple slides. These get a little bit too deep into the engineering side, but these are just an example, and it'll be in the proceedings. For just looking at one of the individual subsystems, this example is from the thermal system. This is some of the engineering decisions and some of the aspects that are considered as you go there, and some of the pros and cons of the different systems you have. One of the things we'll get into in a couple slides is the thermal system. There's still a lot of diversity in the thermal system. And one of the points that we highlight is just the number of thermal junctions you have to consider in your system. That's not as simple as you got air cooled versus liquid cooled versus refrigerant cooled, and what is the heat rejection capability of those 3 media. It's what is that overall system integrated, and how close can you get that media to the actual battery cell that's generating the heat, and then how effective are you at pulling it out there. That overall equation is a little complicated. Okay, so looking at that, walk you through this slide. So when we have slides with the 3 boxes, that's going to hit each of the different industries on there. We try to keep them separate because usually the design aspects for each one are a little bit unique from each other. So for hybrid vehicles, where typically you're more of a power-based system, the batteries usually run at a partial state of charge operation, plus or minus 5%, maybe 10%. Depending on the application. They're usually power-based. We'll talk in a little bit, the majority are nickel-metal hydride-based. But we can see they're all, majority is air-cooled. You got 83% of the hybrid vehicles are air-cooled. When the percentages are calculated by each vehicle iteration. So it's not sales volume-based. It's basically each vehicle launch, each vehicle configuration gets 1 vote. So we're looking at the the engineering decisions, the engineering trends that are into that. We're not looking at sales volume. We calculate these. And that. So that's hybrid vehicles. We go to PHEVs. We see the diversity in the PHEVs. A little more than half are liquid cooled on that. The other half are split. A little bit more. 30% are air cooled. Then you've got refrigerant based for another portion of the PHEVs. When you go to EVs, EVs have a lot of diversity still between liquid cooled, which is a little bit more than half, and then the rest are covered across between refrigerant-based, air-cooled, and convection-cooled. So convection-cooled is like a Nissan Leaf system. There's no transfer of media into or out of the pack. It's just whatever heat gets radiated, out through convection. There's no active air system or other system in there. Cell and chemistry choice. So this first slide, we're looking at the cell type. So first, HEVs. We see that we're split between, we've got prismatic plastic blocks, this is the Panasonic cell that's used in all Toyota and Lexus iterations, as well as some of the earlier GM 2-mode hybrid vehicles. You also got cylindrical cells at 40%. You got some prismatic metal cans in some of the newer ones, such as the Ford applications for hybrids, and then prismatic pouches as well. As we get into PHEV and EREV packs, there's two choices, or two configurations that are in use right now between prismatic pouches and metal cans. Metal can cells are 60% or 62% of the applications. 38% is prismatic pouches. When we go into EVs, you see we have cylindrical 18650s that are used in EVs that aren't used in the other ones. This, of course, is based on the Tesla and in the Tesla variants. So when Tesla did the Toyota RAV4, those are Daimler systems. Those all use the same 18650 cell in that. And then we also have prismatic pouches and prismatic metal can cells that are used in these. Chemistry-wise, for HEV, the majority are nickel metal hydride, and this accounts for all the Toyota and the Lexus vehicles all using nickel metal hydride. You'll see some of the newer HEV offerings are getting into lithium ion right now. And we have some other slides, but we'll get to them today, that show that in hybrid vehicles, you get a little bit of an advantage going from nickel to lithium, but because you still use a power-based lithium, the energy density, you do see an improvement. It's not as significant as the reason why you have to go to lithium for PHEVs. For those, you need the energy density on the energy side cells, energy focused cells. PHEV packs, they use, majority use NMC LMO. This is represented strongly by LG Chem cells. Use a lot of that blend. We see iron phosphate at 15% for the vehicles that were evaluated. Now, iron phosphate had a strong entrance into the market when it first broke out, and then we've seen all the recent launches have basically moved away from iron phosphate into the higher energy density chemistries for that. We see NC for PHEV. We see NCAs at 5%. That's only used by Tesla and Toyota. There's a little bit of NCA there, and there's an earlier Daimler version used. I'm sorry, so Tesla and Toyota's on the EV side. There's an earlier Daimler application on the NCA on the PHEV side. And then we've got the pure NMC without the LMO blend portion of it. EV chemistries are very diverse. There's still a lot of different chemistries out there for chemistries being used for the vehicles that are out there. When we start getting into the energy densities, what we'll start seeing is the nickel-rich NMC is starting to be more prevalent in the newer releases. The older releases are very split. We have some of the earlier releases that had LTO NMC, which isn't in any of the current releases or current products. A little bit of iron phosphate that was introduced. Then we see the most is going to be between NCA, which is what Tesla is promoting, and then the NMC families. Okay, so now drilling down a little bit deeper into the HEV market. The spread of the distribution of pack capacities between 0.5 kilowatt-hour and 2.53 kilowatt-hours. And HEVs, of course, are the longest and have the most history. Starting in 2000, Toyota and Honda launched HEVs. And those all started with a nickel metal hydride initially. For the sake of time, we won't spend too much time here. When we go, let's see how we go back. But when we go through the just all the different offerings that you have. So this is just an example of Toyota's different offerings. It's grouped by battery pack voltage. Within some of these models, there were different sheet metal changes just to accommodate the vehicle structure they were in, but the overall battery block was the same. So it's the same prismatic modules, same type of structure from the module point of view, same thermal system, same EMS. It's just the sheet metal enclosure changed a little bit to accommodate the vehicle that it was in. But you can see all the different offerings that Toyota and Lexus offered in the HEV space. One difference in Toyota in 2016 Prius model was they introduced their first hybrid with a lithium-ion battery pack option. The 2016 Priuses, depending on which model you got, could get either nickel metal hydride or a lithium-ion battery pack. These are pictures of the nickel metal hydride and their lithium pack. You can see from the outside shell, they look very similar. Obviously, internally, they had to change it around for that. That's unique for Toyota's first time. They've done a small run in Japan with the Prius Alpha, and then this is the US and European launch, where you can get either nickel metal hydride or on that. If we look at the different cells chemistries or different cell iterations, Panasonic started with the NP1, they went to NP2, and then 2.5 is the metal can version of the NP2 that they use in the Highlander and the Lexus RX 400 series or 450 series batteries. And then you can see the lithium-ion batteries that they now have between the Panasonic group and the what used to be PEVI group. They have two different variants between the Alpha and then now the newer Prius, as well as the RAV4 hybrid. And you can see the specific energy. This is where you get a noticeable increase. You go from into the 40s, typically to 60s or 70s, which will give you a little bit of a mass reduction for that. But since it's a small pack in the hybrid vehicles, it is not that significant of a reduction. But if the OEMs are using lithium-ion for other programs, they need to keep synergy between cells or suppliers, or their algorithms or EMS or so on, then it makes sense to go to lithium-ion. You can share some of your components and some of your common core understanding across a couple different vehicle lines. If they don't, nickel metal hydride is still a solid battery pack for hybrid vehicles, but only hybrid vehicles. Now we move into PHEVs. We see if you look at the different range of the vehicles, we spread between 11 miles and 72 miles on an FTP cycle. 72 is on the BMW for the range extender, i3. I see the majority outside of that and the Volt, which are the two strongest ranges. The rest are spread between 11 and 38 miles range on there. So PHEVs are still trying to evolve to what is the right range. You go to a smaller battery pack, limited range. You try to stretch the range, to that 50 to 70 range. So it's 50 to 70 mile range. This chart is if we look at battery packs by model year. So what the graph on the right represents is when a new model is introduced, then it gets captured on this chart. What we're looking for is there a trend to where it's either increasing or decreasing. 2017, we have that one milestone on there from when we wrote the report on there. But this small sample size because some of the launches are still in flux, or the information wasn't yet released by the OEMs on that. So if we go back to 2016, we can see a mild trend of the capacity going fairly flat initially, but then possibly stepping up. But you've got a concentration of launches down in the low end for pack capacities, around that 7 to 11 kilowatt hour range, and then a couple of the outliers high. So it's a little unsure as to where is the industry going with the PHEV market. Are they trying to reduce cost and keep it with small battery packs, or are they going to try to increase the electrification side of that? And then if we start looking at specific energy of batteries, we see the graph on the left, the lower left side is the distribution. So we go from 48 or 47.9 watt hours per kilogram to about 100.5 watt hours per kilogram on the left side. Part of that depends on what the chemistry was used or the initial cells and how they developed the pack around it. And then what we're seeing in some of the newer launches, Pacifica released their number, Chrysler Pacifica PHEV launched their numbers right after we generated this. They're also right at the 100 watt hours per kilogram using a nickel-rich NMC. So nickel-rich NMCs are starting to emerge with the new launches on the high end of the specific energies. We'll see that on the EV charts as well when we look at that. So this is just an example of BMW's offerings in the PHEV. So they've started announcing more and more PHEV models for that. For the sake of time, we'll keep going through. You can see the different configurations of the battery pack. With a nominal voltage of 360 volts and 293 volts. There's a 96S and an ABS respectively. They're two packs that they have. And these are the two packs that go into these 4 vehicle launches. So they're trying to commonize some of the packs across the vehicles. Now they're using Samsung cell on there, which is an NMC LMO blend on that. They've since announced after this, at least on the i3, you can see that they have the higher energy battery cell in the i3, so not represented in this one. Samsung is also making some steps forward with the Red NMC on that. As the i3 cell, which is a 63 amp hour cell, goes in 94, I believe is the new number. All right, and then last, we talk about EVs. So the distribution of ranges go from the high end of 283 for a Tesla Model S, and this is one with a 90D. The 100D gets you a little bit more. And then on the low end, with a Mitsubishi i-MiEV, down here at 47 miles. The average range right now is 146. But we're starting to see, obviously, the emergence of the 200-mile plus EVs, which are a big enabler for the EV market, because now you no longer have range anxiety. You drive from home to work, you have to go to soccer game, music practice, or whatever you have to do, pick up your kids or so on. You're not worried about how much range you have. It's not an issue anymore. So we're going to start seeing more and more populations in the high end of range. Newer models that are coming out and promised to come out in the next 2 years. There's another chart looking at the trend of pack capacities, which is typically going to be an increasing trend. So as we say, see more and more populated in later years, we're seeing pack capacities go up. Specific energy. Nice thing to note here is initially on the high end, you only have the Tesla packs with the NCA chemistry. NCA at cell level has the highest energy density. 18650s, there's always a little bit more system level baggage around the cells to make them work in a pack, which brings the overall pack level numbers down. But it's still higher than the traditional NMCs and LMO type cells. But with this the most recent launches, which is Chevy Bolt, which they just announced their numbers. Initially they're targeting 200 miles. They just last week announced 238 miles range. And that puts Tesla with the NCA chemistry from Panasonic and the Bolt with the LG Chem nickel-rich NMC right on top of each other for watt hours per kilogram. For that, that's the first time that you've seen something other than NCA come up at the same pack level numbers for that, and that's due to the nickel-rich NMC. So that's where we're starting to see the traditional OEMs that weren't choosing NCA, they're starting to match the energy density now using the nickel-rich. Going back to the thermal systems on EVs, we're trying to see the methodology behind the OEMs choosing what they chose. So there's a large range between liquid-cooled, refrigerant-based thermal systems, convection-cooled, and air-cooled. So what this chart was looking at, as you can see, the dotted lines are grouping the different systems. So from convection on the left, air, then the liquid glycol-cooled, and then refrigerant on the right, and trying to see if it matches, follows a trend of either the PE ratio, which is the power to energy ratio of the battery pack, or the peak power, which is represented by the bar graph. What we can see is we can see a loose correlation, but it's still not very clear. You can see between the convection and air-cooled, they have a lot of overlap to themselves. As you get into the higher peak powers, then you definitely move into more of a liquid-cooled system. But there's still a lot of diversity, and the methodology follows more of the OEM's experience, I think, of some of their traditional packs and their comfort levels than other reasons. These are the Chevy Bolt numbers. They just announced the 238 mile range last week. We updated that. I don't have their MPGE number yet, but their base price $37,500. After incentive is $30,000. So this will be real important for the market to see the market acceptance of the first lower priced 200 mile plus car. That's a picture of the battery pack. How they have it configured. They're using 96 series, 3 parallel configuration at 355 volts nominal on that. And then the LG Chem cell they're using, this is an actual picture of the cell. They haven't released that information yet, but it's something similar to this where it's a pouch cell with tabs on both ends. The reason for this is one of the difficulties in the EV market and one of the drives towards 18650s sometimes is you can get a low profile floor pan. So if you picture a Tesla pack that encompasses the whole floor pan of the car, basically, from rocker panel, front axle to rear axle, you need to keep a low profile pack. You can't have a really tall cell, because then it just doesn't work from a vehicle perspective. The driver trying to step into the car, it doesn't work, and then the seating position of the driver doesn't work for that. So in order to have a car that's attractive to the customers, you need to keep a low profile battery pack, which an 18650 can be, because you're only 65 millimeter tall, so you can do an overall roughly 110 millimeter tall pack. But now this is the first low profile cell other than the 18650 that can meet that. Now their cell is somewhere in the 100 millimeter range. So then your pack height can be a reasonable pack height, underneath 150 millimeters pack height. So you can have a large battery pack to get your 200 plus mile range, but still have a decent vehicle design from the vehicle side. All right, so for conclusions, so the OEMs are still making design choices for system designs according to internal company imperatives and requirements. So we're still seeing a lot of diversity in the systems that they choose and the reasons that they choose it. Just strong diversity in the industry. So the supply base, we'll be able to converge on individual solutions. Still need to be able to support multiple different solutions that are out there. And with that, thank you for your time. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them after.
All right, thank you for that talk. And I believe I am the next speaker, so I won't introduce myself. Let me get the talk up there. Back to the normal order. All right. So I had to get my note cards because I didn't memorize this stuff. But they changed the order on me, now they changed it back, which is all fair. So now we're going to hear from the sponsor of this wonderful conference. So our next speaker is Mr. Zhen Li, who is the founder and chairman of Guoxuan, a high-tech company limited in China. It's one of China's leading power battery technology companies that supplies batteries for vehicles, including the world's first mass all-electric bus route. This company was founded in 2006, and Guoxuan was recognized as one of the top new high-tech enterprises and was included in the National Torch Plan in 2008 and went public in 2015. Under his leadership, Mr. Li makes Guoxuan brand world-class for technology and innovation. So he's currently a council member of China EV 100, vice president of Hui's Merchant Global Council, and deputy chairman of the Chamber of Commerce of the Anhui province. Welcome, Mr. Li.
非常的谢谢各位嘉宾，这两天呢，好到今天来给你